Christine. I'm so excited to be able to chat with you and get to know more about you, your work, and your coaching practice. So thank you for taking the time to be on the show today.
Yeah, thanks so much. I'm excited to be here. Yeah.
Yeah. So you are currently out in Austin, is that correct?
Yeah, I'm in Austin, Texas. I've been here for about oof, almost 8 years now, but I'm originally from New York.
Mhm.
And I've bounced around a lot, but this has been the longest I've been here for about 8 years. Yeah.
Awesome, awesome. So you're originally from New York, and I know a bit about your background, but I would love for you to share with our listeners about how that kind of went, about being from New York and how you got started in the arts, and then how you ended up in Austin.
Yeah. I have kind of lived all over the place. I'm from New York. I did my undergrad at Washington University in St. Louis did a BFA there. Then I went to Canada. I did an MFA in Canada at Concordia University. And I lived in Italy. I did a Fulbright over in Italy a little bit. When was that? Like 2015. I bounced around a lot, all like following wherever the creative path took me. That was like kind of where I was for the first like 10, 15 years of my creative practice. And my goal all along was very practical person. I was always like, I have creative work, but I also like need to eat. I need to have healthcare. I need to pay my bills. So I was always someone who was, looking to find that balance between, being true to my creative self and following that path, but also finding a way to financially support myself along the way. And I loved teaching. So my plan was always to make my creative work. And at the time, I wanted to follow the more academic path. So I was like planning to teach in higher education. I had done that on top of teaching at the community center level, which I loved, working at smaller city art centers and things like that. And I came out to Austin. The way I ended up here was that I got a teaching job at the University of Texas in 2017. And I was there for a little bit. And then I just found that higher ed was not for me, which I will talk about what came up there. But so I left in 2019, and Austin was such an awesome creative community. Like people are so supportive here. There's so many interesting dynamic artists here. Texas actually has some like very cool stuff going on. So I decided to stay, and I started coaching in about 2018, 2019. And that is what I do now full time to support, as the other side of my art practice. I have an art practice, and then I have a coaching practice.
Mm.
Two things definitely feed each other. Yeah.
I love this. And I completely feel that having two sides that feed each other, the creative making side, and then this other side where you're working with individuals in a creative way, but also in an active service, which it sounds like that may have been what attracted you to the academic realm, maybe. But I would love to dig into that part right now, because I think I meet so many young artists who, and I was one of them. I think we probably had the same path in some ways, where you think really the only job I can get that is going to be a steady pay and it's going to have all the accolades and do all the things is an academic position. But then once you get in there, there's a lot of other things. So could you tell us a little bit about that experience for yourself?
Oh yeah. Well, I think the big piece of, yeah, so I wanted to work in higher ed because I think there was, I loved teaching, but I think what people are drawn to in teaching at that level is they want to have a certain level of conversation around art making, around how it integrates into your life, right? They want to ask these like big questions, and they want to have like a big dialogue around it. And that can be fulfilling. But what I have found in that context was that there were actually these huge looming questions that were being totally ignored by the academic setting, which is like, what does it mean to have a creative practice and sustain yourself, right? As like a person who has to live in this world. What does success look like? How can that be defined by the individual? What does having a long-term vision look like? What does pivoting look like? What does the integration of day jobs look like? Having a day job doesn't mean you're a failure.
Mm-hmm.
It's like this whole thing that no one was looking at. People were scared to ask these questions, and the questions weren't being invited and entertained in that setting. And I actually found that at the community center level, it was safer for people to ask those questions and to talk talk about those things and get tools and resources and community around those things, right? So what my problem was there was no place to talk about this stuff, and I felt very limited by the questions that I could ask and the things I could create and the timeline on which I could create them, because academia is slow. It's slow. And that was not working for me, because I felt like there was this real urgency that artists were stressed and they had big questions and they wanted them answered now. And academia was not set up for that type of response. So I left in 2019 to start really talking to, like you said, like it's a service kind of relationship where you want people to help people grow, and you want to see them understand what they are struggling with and how to help them answer the questions that they're asking. And that's something that came through in coaching, and the coaching work was really exciting.
So you mentioned, yes, academic is such a slow dinosaur of moving to kind of change, and pivot. So there was these questions that needed answering. I was wondering if you could share with us some of the questions that you felt like you were receiving over and over, or that is commonly being posed to you from artists.
Yeah. Question number one: how do I make a living as an artist? What does that mean? What does make it living as an artist mean? I think there is this it's whether or not it's talked about directly in higher education, there's the myth that to succeed, to be a real serious artist, because this is the fear that every creative person has, is they want to be taken seriously. They want their ideas, they want their work, they want their commitment to be taken seriously by people. And I think there's the fear in higher education that my work will not be taken seriously. I will not be seen as a real serious artist unless I am making 100% of my income from my art and selling my art and being financially supported by my art. And the reality is that most artists do not live from getting 100% of their income from their art. There's all sorts of situations, right? Everyone has very different resources. Everyone needs different things to feel supported and well in their financial life, and supported and well in their creative life. And those are two different things, and they both have to be spoken to, right? And higher education never really looked at that. So that was the urgent question that my students were asking, and I feel like people just kind of like dodged it. They're like, they really like, well, work on that portfolio, get really make really great work, and then it'll just keep working harder. That's the answer. Yeah.
I so agree with this. This is something like I find frustrating as well, is I feel like so many artists have this question, and well-meaning artists will respond to them, well, you just need to get in the studio. And I'm like, it's not a studio problem, that they're having this other life. How do I put it all together problem? Because nobody wants to talk about it. Yeah. They say, go work harder. And it's like, no. You need to shift and be working maybe in this realm a little bit more. So I would love to hear a little bit about, you have these artists coming to you and they're like, oh, I can have a day job, or, oh, like, not that we all need validation, but validation can feel great. You know what I mean? Yeah. It's good to have somebody to talk to that can say, yes, like we can move forward in this. Could you just give us a couple examples of maybe how some of the artists that you've worked with have been able to pivot to be able to support their practice while also continuing to grow their own creative work?
Yeah, there are so many different situations, right? There are some artists that I work with that have a 9-to-5, and they love having a 9-to-5 because it gives them the flexibility to be radical in their creative work. And they say, you know what? I don't have to worry about my bills being paid. I don't have to worry about healthcare. I got kids. I got to support these babies. I am going to keep this 9-to-5, and that and use my vacation days for residencies, and I can be radical in my work. That's one scenario. I have other artists who say, I like to work seasonally. I like to, do a contract gig and make of money and then take 6 months off and really focus on a body of work and get, a show, get ready for a show, or, go travel with my work and things like that. And I like to go in and out of working. And then there's some artists who don't have to think about the financial picture, right? They might have other resources, and that's a resource that's available to them. And there's no shame in that. Everyone has different resources. And then there's some artists who really thrive in the juggle. And I'm probably in that bucket, right? Like running my own business, right? And doing that, and then having my creative practice and having my family. And that's a juggle that I can do. Not everybody can do that. Mm-hmm. And so part of it is not feeling shame around what's going to be good for your creative life and good for your financial life, and B, playing to your strengths. Everybody has different strengths. And if you're not really honest with yourself about what you enjoy doing, where you thrive, then you're not going to be helping yourself in any way, right? You're just going to be like, holding yourself back. You need to give yourself permission to do the things that are going to actually serve the creative life that you want, not trying to follow one singular model, because that's what academia presents. They present a singular model, and everyone feels like, why can't I fit into this model? Like, why doesn't this work for me? Like, that's, part of it.
Oh, I think this is such a wonderful conversation, because you're right. There's always been this one model that was presented to artists. I know when I was in undergrad and graduate school, it was like that. And it really comes out of, white male working artist, and there wasn't room for these questions of family, caretaking, doing these other things that actually feed you. So breaking down that myth of what it means to be an artist is just so empowering. I would love to hear a little bit about, how you help artists kind of discover their strengths, because like you said, we all have them and they're varied, and that's so beautiful. Do you have any tips for maybe some artists who are listening that are really trying to kind of zone in on some strengths for themselves?
Yeah, that's a great one. Well, maybe let's think about it less as strengths and more as your season. Because when you think about it like your season, like that's a great point you were making, Erica, about like parenthood, right? It's like parenthood of having small children is a particular season of your life where your attention needs to be on your kids. And then they grow up and they don't need as much attention anymore. And I think where artists torture themselves is that life is not a mountain, right? In the sense that you're going up, 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 and everything's the same. And then you reach your destination and it all worked out, right? It's a river. It's constantly changing. It's winding. Your point of view changes, your resources change, your energies change, and you have to ride that. So what I like to do with artists is think about, what is the season of your life that you are in? What are the opportunities of that time and the resources, and what are the limitations? So for example, I am in a season, I always use this because I'm in a particular season where I have a 3-year-old, right? And that means that like my limitation might be, I can't travel as much. I can't, I'm on like this certain schedule of day of when he needs me. I don't have as much flexibility there. But I have, the opportunity is that maybe I'm staying in Texas more, and there's great places to people to have in the studio, right? And I have my studio in my backyard, and that's an amazing resource. So in every season, you have to accept like it's not forever, and you need to leverage where you have resources and opportunities, and you need to accept and embrace the limitations. And you torture yourself if you do anything different, and you have to accept that the season is not forever, it's going to change.
I love how you're saying like the season, it's not forever, because it's not. I've just been thinking about how I'm moving into the season where my kids are a little bit older and everything's kind of shifting. I'm going from the young child age to a different space, and it's exciting. Also a little scary, but that's other stuff. Also what you're saying about like, you are looking for the opportunities. And I think sometimes I encounter people who, instead of looking for those opportunities, are looking more at what is not serving them rather. So they're like, well, now I can't travel, and that's terrible because I can't go to these shows, where you're like, well, now that I'm not traveling as much, I can look what's around me. And I think that lens switch is like incredibly empowering, like how you're talking about that.
Yeah, because it's about focus.
Mhm.
And that is something that artists really struggle with is focus, picking what they want to focus on and letting that grow. Because artists do something called spray and pray. Have you heard this? You know what it is.
Yeah, say more. Say more.
Spray and pray is where there is no clear, because the artist path is so unconventional and difficult and unclear and specific to the person. We are always looking for models of how to do it. And
Mhm.
what we do instead is we go on social media and we look at 1,000 models and we say, well, that person's doing that, and that person's doing that, and that person's doing that. And I should just do all these things. I should like spray it all out there. I'll do a little bit of this, a little bit of this, apply to 500 different things. And then I'll just like hope that something comes through, and I'll let that lead me in
Mhm.
where to go. Versus saying, okay, what is the life that I want to build? What is actually important to me? What does a thriving creative practice look like? When I ask people that, they do not have an answer most of the time.
Mhm.
When I say, what does success look like in your creative practice? People do not, they really, really struggle with that question of what they want for their art.
Mhm.
And it's important for us to define those things so you don't get distracted. So you can say, this is what I'm working towards. It's going to be different than these other people, but I'm committed to this path. And yes, I'll respond and I'll follow the river and I'll go with the flow, but this is where I'm steering the ship. And I'm going to try to focus on that based on what I want and my resources and opportunities and all of that.
Mhm.
It's hard. It is hard. And that is why you do need accountability, and you need someone to get you out of the weeds. We're all in the weeds, right? Of like just doing the day to day and trying to get through it. And you need someone to pull you out of the weeds and be like, hey, let's look at this from like a bird's eye view and make a vision for where it is that you actually want to go, so you don't feel like you're reacting all the time. Artists are always feeling like they're reacting to things versus responding, which is when you take the information in front of you and you filter it back into your big vision and you say, okay, now I know what to do. That's a response versus a reaction.
I love this idea of steering the ship. And, there's always going to be a response and an amount of flexibility that we have to have in our creative practice, but you are still going towards that target or destination, because I was just reading this morning, like we have our plans. Actually, somebody said this to me recently and I hadn't heard it before, how do you make God laugh? Make plans. And I was like, oh, like that was kind of cracking me up, but we still have to do that, of course, and then that ebb and flow is the response to what life throws at you. So you're talking about, accountability and somebody to pull you out of the weeds. And so I'd love to dive a little bit more into a Mighty Practice, your coaching service, to hear a little bit more about your programs that you have or what you offer artists.
Yeah. So the programs they speak to kind of two big challenges that artists have. Challenge number one is there's a lot of artists who have gotten consumed by their day job, consumed by life, consumed by the juggle, and they have lost a connection to their creative practice. And they're really struggling to find a way back to their creative work and make it a sustainable part of their life, because that is what every artist wants. Is like, we all want to have a practice that we can like touch on the work. Even if things are busy, we have a dialogue with ourselves. That's what, practice is like a thriving dialogue with your inner life and how to get to that. So my creative momentum program focuses on giving artists a process so they can build that creative momentum and start and sustain a practice. And the big thing with that, this is another thing that I struggled with higher ed because they didn't teach, is we give people a process for developing their ideas and understanding where they get stuck.
Mm.
So I'll give you an example, because this is a fun thing to think about with how artists function. The process that we teach has 5 stages. So the first stage is clear,
Mhm.
getting ready, setting up your space, identifying where you're getting stuck or old stories that are not serving you anymore. The second stage is testing. So you're like experimenting, trying things out. Fuel, where you look outward for information, you get some models, some new skills, all that. Generate, where you make a bunch of work. And then reflect, where you think about that work. Now, here's the secret, is that every artist over invests in one of these stages, one stage that they really, really love. And then as a result, they get stuck. What stage do you feel like you identify with, Erica?
Generate. That's like, I love just being in that, like, let's make. I want to make some more.
Yes. And
default space.
I am also a generator, and also because like you do so many different things, which makes sense. So you're probably producing in your creative practice, and then you're like producing with a podcast, and then you have, a job, and then you have your kids, and like, right. So it's like, you're probably very effective at generating. But sometimes with all of us is that whatever stage we gravitate towards, we're trying to solve the problem of our creative life by investing more at that stage. So what generators tend to do is that when they feel stuck, they say, well, I got to make more. I got to do more. I got to create more. I got to start a new business. I got to start a new thing. I got to make some new paintings. That's my problem. But in reality, what they need to do to get unstuck is to go to the next stage. They need to go to reflect. So that is part of the process that we teach in the Creative Momentum program, is like, where are you over investing in your creative practice, and how do you move to the next stage to get momentum and to get yourself unstuck? Yeah.
I love that. Like identifying where like you go to, like when you're stressed, what do you go to? And then having this step-by-step saying, no, just go to the next step. That'll get you moving forward again, rather than stuck in place. That is wonderful.
And it's also accepting too that there is I think especially social media propagates this myth, which is like, well, if you're a real artist, you are going all the time. Like you never get stuck. Like you're always generating.
Yeah.
And that's true. Generate is only one of the 5 stages.
Yeah.
There's going to be times where you're not generating and you're resting and you're thinking, or you're taking a class and you're refueling, or you're messing around and you're making something that maybe you don't want to share because it's still in the incubator of your creative life and it's not something that's ready to be shared. And all of that that's not stuff that's shareable on social media. That's all in your private inner life.
I feel like, there's good and bad with social media, but what you're saying is so true. And it's something I really am concerned about for artists, which is, if you're not showing up on your feed every day, showing something new, or just spending time on it, like it's just this like treadmill that doesn't really expand your practice. Like, yes, we should have it so you can connect with people, etc. But everything just seems to get so out of control for artists on that. Do you have any advice for artists who feel like they are getting really sucked into their social media, or they feel like the validation comes through that?
Yes. Well, two things that happen, I think, from social media. One, the comparison game, right? People will go on social media and they think they're going on for fuel, but really they're going on to confirm to themselves that they're doing something wrong. Right. They're like, I didn't do enough of this. I didn't do enough of that, or this is the right path. And why didn't I do that? I should have. Right. So it does not help build confidence, which is what we need as creative people. We need confidence in our vision. We need confidence to take action and to push ourselves out of our comfort zone. Confidence for you to take risks in your work. That is everything. And social media does not encourage confidence. The second thing that it does that's bad is it teaches artists how to set vanity goals. Vanity goals being, right, where you focus on surface level metrics as evidence that you are moving in the right direction.
Yes.
So let's do an example. Like, let's say you want to get more sales in your creative work, right? And you're like, I really want to get more sales. I really want to have my work placed in more collections, placed and, just have a bigger client base. And I need to just be creating a lot of content on social media, because if I have this number of how many followers I have, I'm going to be getting closer to getting more sales. That's a vanity goal, because you're focusing on the surface level metric of the follower count versus what you really need when you want more sales is a dialogue with clients and buyers, right? And if you put your energy there, how do you create that dialogue with clients and buyers? That's where you need to put your energy in order to get closer to your goal. So it distracts people from doing really like the meat and potatoes of their actions towards their goal.
Mm-hmm,
It's like smoke and mirrors.
Yes, yes. No, I completely agree with this. This is something that I've talked to artists about, which is it's not the amount of likes that you're getting or the amount of followers, it's who's following, who's liking, how do you create conversations rather than just numbers, but it's like such a seduction, that like number, you know what I mean? That just, I mean, it causes so many issues. So I know I have a lot of artists who write, and when we have somebody like yourself on here who's doing so much, and you have these incredible programs, they're having that vanity goal of likes, but they want to get the sales. Do you have a tip for those artists who are looking to get sales or make more sales, maybe through Instagram or not, however you'd like to frame that?
Yeah, so that's kind of what I do in the second program that I run. So the first program is really about the creative momentum, and then we have our goal setting program, which is generally a 6-month program. And anytime someone comes to me with like a really specific thing they want, like they're like, I really want to get this specific residency, or I really want to get a solo show in this gallery, or whatever it is. What I want people to do is scale out and first build the map. Because what can happen is if we laser in, we do on one particular thing that we want, we do something called tunneling. Mm-hmm. Which is where we put our blinders on and we say, like, this is the thing. If I get this thing, all of my problems are going to be solved. This is the right answer. This is the golden choice. This is the ticket. And it's very black or white thinking. So instead, what I have people do in the program is over 6 months, we build, a vision for your practice. We look at your season. What are your opportunities and resources? Then we set a goal, and then we set your actions. And those are all different things, right? The vision is where you're steering the ship. What are the big pieces of your creative life? Where do you live? How do you make your money? Do you have a family? Who are you surrounded by? What's influencing you? What does your day-to-day look like as a creative? Then we look at your season. What are your opportunities and resources right now? What are your limitations right now? And then we set the goal. Because that artist who might come and say, hey, it's all my problems are going to be solved if I can just make $10,000 more in sales this year. They might have an opportunity that they are not seeing, or they might have a limitation that they're not working with, and they're doing tunneling in how they're looking at their actions. Does that make sense?
That makes so much sense. I love it. So this idea of scale, looking at the season, setting goals, and then kind of mapping out how to get to that goal. Because you're right. I think everybody's kind of looking for a magic bullet, that's going to solve all the issues. And there really isn't one. And I think that's why the academic realm, that was like the magic bullet for so long, for so many people. And then we realized, wait, that's not actually it, it works for some people, but not others, so.
In the creative life balance of having a job in academia and then having your creative practice.
Mm-hmm. Oh, no, just like, yeah. Like people think like, oh, if I get that academic job, I'm going to be set. Everything's going to be great. And it's like, no, it's not going to solve everything. There's still going to be other things that pop up. So you've talked about 2 wonderful programs that you have, the creative momentum and then the goal setting program, which is 6 months. Now, are these are these group? Are these singular? Could you tell us a little bit more about what's involved with that, or what that looks like for an artist who'd be interested?
Yeah, so those are both cohorts. So you're in a group. It's not a massive group, because I don't like running massive group programs, because I want people to really get to know each other and have a dialogue and really learn from each other. So they're small group programs, and you meet generally, depending on the program, you meet either like once a week or twice a month. The 6 month meets twice a month, and the fall creative momentum program meets once a week. And then usually there is an individual component on top of that. So you're in a group and you have these group calls, you are working through particular goals that you're working on, or whatever your particular objective or challenges that you're working through and you have accountability for. And then you work with me individually as well. So you have individual calls as well. And I have found that because community is so important to artists, and feeling isolated is like one of the biggest challenges that artists have, I have found that the cohort, working people in small groups, is actually really, really great for deepening the practice, overcoming roadblocks, and building confidence and connection. So I do that. And then I add the one-on-one coaching on top of that if people need extra help.
Oh, yeah. That's wonderful. Like, yeah, I agree. Totally. Community is so important. Those friendships and bonds that can be made. And then the one-on-one on top of that is just fantastic, where you can really dive into the individual, topics with that artist.
Yeah. Like we were saying, like everyone's situation is different. What you're trying to work towards, sometimes you really have to talk it through and have someone ask you tough questions that like no one else is asking you, to help you think about what that big vision is and what is it that you're telling yourself is not available to you.
I love that. So you also have workshops. Could you tell us just a little bit about the workshops that you offer?
The workshops, usually I do workshops just a few times a year. So that is around a particular topic. We actually have a workshop coming up in a little bit. I think we're going to miss it by the time this comes out, but that's around like learning the fundamentals of the creative process, these 5 stages that I talk about. And then in January, we usually have a goal setting workshop that comes up to teach people, again, how to make a plan with the vision, season, actions, and goals and actions. So usually the workshop is around whatever tool that it is I want to offer artists to help them think through where they're getting stuck in their creative practice and where they need accountability and feedback.
Wonderful. Well, excellent. That's so wonderful. You have one in January that'll be coming up. And where can we find you online? So people who are interested in learning more about your work and also your coaching, where should they go to find more information?
Yeah. So all the coaching is through my organization called A Mighty Practice. So amightypractice.com. We also have a podcast. So if you wanted to dig deeper in some of the topics that we covered today, the podcast is really great for that. And then my own work for my own creative practice is just christine-garvey.com. And you can find out about the programs at amightypractice.com.
Excellent. Well, we will be sharing all those links, guys. You can go to the show notes and you can find those links to be able to access the workshops, the coaching, the podcast, all of that. And before we jump off of here, Christine, I always love to ask, is there any piece of advice that you would like to give to the artists who are listening today?
Yeah. Don't spray and pray. Right. Think about what it is that you want and why you want it. And can you have more patience with your timeline? People always have some type of subjective timeline of when they think they should have done something and why. And I want to ask you, like, are you holding on to this artificial timeline that is not serving you? And can you have a bigger, broader timeline for what you want to do in your creative life? And can that empower you to take the risks in the areas that you need to?
Oh, I love that. I love that. Having more patience with your timeline. I think that is gold right there. Well, thank you so much for being on today. It was so wonderful to hear about what you're doing and also just incredible tips. I'm just taking tons of notes from everything you've been talking about, which is really fun. So thank you so much.
Thanks, Erica. This was great. Thanks for having me.
All right. Bye.